Hi there. I am all about creating eye-popping painting. Picture this, a wild mix of bold colors that dance together, shadows playing hide and seek, and textures that practically jump off the canvas. I am all about the art of balance. No too much detail everywhere, but just enough to keep you hooked. Wanna feel the vibe? Greetings. Before we dive into the world of lily painting, I want to share a bit about myself. I am a self-taught artist who completed schooling and post-graduated in the vibrant city of Dubai. You can catch a glimpse of my ongoing creative endeavor and connect with me through my social media handle Sunartcafe. For more in-depth exploration of my portfolio and artistic journey, feel free to visit my website at www.sunithanishanth.com. So let's get started. Alright class, in this watercolor tutorial, we need only some basics materials. First and foremost thing is the sketchbook. So this painting we'll be doing in the sketchbook, and rest of the materials are a palette, brush, eraser, pencil, a cotton towel, and a jar of water. These are the materials we required for this tutorial. When talking about the brushes, we need only two brushes, one bigger size brush and one smaller size brush. And the bigger size brush is number 12 and the smaller size brush is number 6. So only just two brushes we will start this painting. When coming to the watercolor sketchbook, make sure you are using a 300 GSM watercolor sketchbook to hold the water much better than a lesser grades. Alright class, this is the reference image what we are taken for this painting. In this particular subject, you can see the variations of purples and violet, green. So the colors will be ultramarine blue, crimson lake, olive green, Payne's grey, and orange. Show you some swatches of this painting. The colors, and we will move to first ultramarine blue. The first color will be ultramarine blue, and the second will be crimson lake. Next is olive green. Then comes to Payne's grey. Then a little orange. Now these are the colors we are going to use in this painting. So I will show you a single petal, that is this petal, and we will see how the colors are placed and how that variations can be created. Now we will grab a brush. First we will mix a combination of little ultramarine and a little touch of crimson. So we have already taken the combination of little ultramarine and crimson, and I just want to see what is the shade. Perfect. I hope you can see the color. It is quite pale, so the color should be around in this shade. Consider that since it is our first wash, we will move with the first wash. Now we have to grab quickly another combination. I hope this is fine. Let me see the swatch. Okay, fine. And that will be our, this color will be, this is the mid-tone. This will be our cast shadow. It is falling like this. So, considering the shape I'm painting, when moving towards down, I am taking a little of crimson and adding to that color to create little variation, and that's it. Now what I have to do is wash my brush, and towards this part, what you have to do is blend it. How will you blend? Add little water first, then push the paint to that plain water area, blend it. Here you can see we got a sharp edge, we have to blend that. How do we blend? Clean the brush, soften the edge. Did you see that? Now here we will be painting in again wet on wet technique. The bud will be painting in wet on wet technique. Here the colors are Payne's grey, crimson and ultramarine. So first we will go for a wash with the plain water. Ultramarine, crimson lake and Payne's grey. So what is the shade? This is the shade. First we will make a wash. Moving towards down, you can see two variations. One, towards the edge of the bud, there is a lighter shade, and when moving towards down to the stem where that joining part, it is in darker color. So we have to consider that part. So we will go for this this lighter version. So take the ultramarine blue. Again this combination, take a little, paint that area. What is this? This is our first wash. Okay, now blend it. Let it dry. Now towards the right part, it is creating more darker shade. Take more darker color, more Payne's grey, wash it, wash the brush, take crimson lake, add it, and we need little bit, and see the shade. This is the shade. So we have to consider the edge of that particular bud. It is having a small section of separation. That thing you have to keep in mind. In this way, if you make a color study, it is very easy and useful for you to get along when you paint your actual subject. Now I am creating more depth towards the right part, again adding more Payne's grey to the same color combination I have taken. Before the paint gets dried, you have to blend it. That is why we have to consider the wet on wet technique. Now I have to add more variation. Crimson lake, Payne's grey, ultramarine blue. Need more crimson lake. Now we'll see what color we get. Okay, fine, perfect. This color matches to this color. So always have a color swatch or a color study before you paint on your subject. Again, intensifying the edge, adding more paint spray, taking a little of premix and blending to that. That's it. Now coming to the edge, again the darker tone, add it to that area. Here I am going to use a dry brush technique. What is dry brush technique? Here you see the water is very less, okay? Now see, the water is very less on the brush. So with that, we have to create a dry brush technique to add more interest, more detail and texture. That's it. Welcome you all. So before we go for actual painting, we have to make some pre-mixing. So for that I am taking ultramarine blue, crimson lake, when you mix crimson lake and ultramarine blue, you will get a purple shade. So always good to have a piece of paper next to you to test the paint. When you see, you can identify the tonal variations. So we are adding little more blue into that to get that bluish look. Now, there we go. I will start with this consistency. Now, laying the color. So washes must be laid quickly to prevent hard edges from forming. You cannot stop to make more color, so you must ensure that you have enough washes. Use up a surprising amount of paint. The paint should be added to the water, not vice versa, but don't start with a large amount of water. Or you could paste a good deal of paint, achieving a strong enough mix. Instead, put a small amount of water into a palette, pick some color with a moistened brush and stir it into the water. If it looks too light, add more paint, and if it looks too dark, add more water, repeating the process until you have the depth of color you require. So stir the paint in well with the brush each time so that the particles of pigments are thoroughly dissolved and there is nothing left on the brush. Otherwise you will have unsightly streaks of color. So before laying the wash, check the color by painting some on a sparse piece of paper and let it dry. Watercolor becomes much lighter as it dries and the color may not be what you originally expected. So basically, watercolor painting is the process of building up a picture through a series of washes of paint diluted with water. Now we will cover the entire petal, but always remember to give variations even if it is your first wash. So the kind of brush you use is a matter of personal preference. Some artists like a large round brush, others prefer a flat one. By looking at your reference image every now and then, you will get an idea of your color chart in your mind. Watercolor paints are transparent and consequently paintings are building up in layers, working from light to dark. So it is seldom possible to achieve a really dark color with one just wash, because the paint must be diluted with water in order to spread, and the white of the paper will always show through to some extent. So the darkest colors are achieved by laying one wash over another until the required depth is achieved. So while looking at my reference image, I am placing the paint according to the highlight and the darkness. When talking about highlight and darkness, there is one more factor to be considered, that is mid-tone. So you have to consider while laying your paint all these things in your mind. To create that interest, you have to consider adding more variation in your wash. So going with the ultramarine on the whole petal on this side, because this part is where the highlight mostly hits. The light almost is pale in this area. So I am considering to paint in light. It is not wise to pile on too much colors. As a general rule, you should limit yourself to not more than 3 overlaid washes. So otherwise the colors will begin to lose their clarity, becoming stirred up and muddy. When you begin a painting, you need to have a clear idea of what the finished work is to look like, as only this way you can estimate the depth of color you need for the first washes. So when coming to these 4 petals, you need to plan the highlights, as you already know when you look into your reference image. So carefully place your color. You also need to plan the highlights when you lay your paint, even in your first wash itself. As you know already that the white in watercolor comes from the paper. So white highlights are achieved by reserving the white area on the paper, which means leaving the shape as white paper and painting around it. So highlights are not always white, but areas of a light colored wash can be reserved in the same way. But by leaving parts showing through overlay washes, white highlights can be added in opaque paint. But for purity and sparkle, you can't beat unblemished white paper. So you must have a thorough understanding of your materials, your paint, your reference image, the mood that the reference image conveys. So all these things should be studied, and it is matter when you start a painting. Now laying ultramarine blue towards the left hand side of the petals. So here the highlights mostly hits, so I am giving some variations by adding little crimson to the bottom. For painting the bud, it is almost in darker contrast, so our first layer must be a little bit darker. Gaining the confidence before laying the paint is very crucial in any medium. So you have to be very careful with the mixing and even with the brush strokes. Now laying the same pre-mixed paint on the subject, carefully laying without getting into the water body. So I am defining my brush strokes within the sketch. Even though you are simply painting what you can see, you still need to compose your picture. This doesn't mean that you have to move everything or invent shadows where there is none, but you do have to decide what viewpoint to take. which part of the scene to concentrate on, how much of the picture you will devote to foreground, and so on. So before you start, just walk around a bit to find the position that gives you the most interesting angle on the subject. As you can see in the reference image, I have noticed the bud is little bit lower than the flower. So to get that right perspective to fit in my paper, I shifted the bud little bit closer to the flower. So before you start, just walk around a bit to find the position that gives you the most interesting angle. However, you still need to decide where to place the horizon even you drawing a landscape, and to consider whether there are many elements in the scene which you can emphasize for effect, or any which you can play down or perhaps leave out altogether. Make sure you are not copying the scene. You are making your own statement about it, and you don't have to include everything you see. After all, you would hardly try to paint everything in the foreground, everything in the background. So you just have to generalize to create an impression of what you see in your reference image. So if there is a small featureless things in the foreground, just ignore it. So now I'm moving to the water body. Here I will be fast forwarding. You can have a study on my process, and you can use it in a painting if you feel it is necessary. Now I will be painting in a pale wash. Since my paper is damp, it gives me a soft edge. But when your subject is closer to the damp area, you have to be very careful with the water consistency and the water weight on your brush. Now I'll be filling the water body. If you add some splatters, it will give you a most interesting pattern or texture. So try to add more techniques while you go on. Now I almost finished my first layer on the bottom part of the water body. We'll be moving to the upper part. Here I was planning to give the edge in a diffused effect, but later I changed my mind and I go ahead with painting with the same pigment on the whole area. You just have to be very careful when you lay your paint. Never go for overdoing. Now that's it. We have done with this layering. Now we will see in the next session. So you have to be very careful when laying the paint on the subject. So I will first go with the wet on wet technique. So to get more control and precision in blending, I will start from the darker side, that is where the shadow comes. So straight away I will go with some pink This is the second layer. Now into that, before it get dry, I will add more paint spray. Now adding more paint spray. Laying some pre-mixed color. Adding little pink into that. Taking little blue, that is ultramarine. Now blending. Now little interest by adding more variations. Just give some dry brushing. It will create automatically a texture and some definitions. A little paint spray into that. Creating more texture by dry brushing. A little of blue into the center. Now we will work on the stem. We will go for wet on wet, adding more water into that to make a smooth blending. Going with pink first. So I'm laying pink under, washing my brush, then blending the edge. Looking at my reference image, I am just picking little olive green and I am placing a little of that in that pink. That's it. Now we will work on the cast shadow on the right side. So going with the paint spray, pink, blue combination. More paint spray. Blue to make more interest and create some variations. Washing my brush again, blending it quickly. Adding more paint spray. So the blending should be done very quickly. Picking little olive green to that. just to suggest that freshness. I need little more blue and pink combination, so adding that, I'm creating some strokes to suggest that nerves on the stem. This is like a dry brushing. So we have finished our bud. Now we will work again on the flower. We have to work on the stem and the petals. Once we finish that, we will move on to the center part. Now here I need some transition. So to get that even transition, I am adding water first, then picking the color as I told you, a little of orange, a little of orange. This is permanent orange, by the way, and into that crimson, a little edge, not everywhere, just sparingly here and there. Now what you have to do is take your magenta, add into that, keep that lighter part there, don't disturb. Now pull the same shade towards the edge, define some texture by giving some strokes. Now adding little bit more to the edge to get that glow. Now here we have to intensify more cast shadow. For that again paint ultramarine blue. Into that I will add a little of our pre-mixed color, that violet, a little. I need to check the color. No, I have to add more purple into that. I will check it again. Okay, fine. Now we will place the color into the cast shadow part. Now before it gets dry, you have to lift little color. Now blending the same shade. Now adding more pink into that to get more interest. In this way I can gain more control on the shadow and the texture. Now it's fine. Now I will add a little paint screen to that towards the bottom part to define the shadow. Now I have to add little green towards the lighter side of that stem to get that fresh look. But in my reference image I cannot see that green, but when adding more variations in your composition, it is quite fun and it's really rewarding. As I added green, immediately it changed its dimension. Now you can see what I'm talking about. Make sure you should not go for an overwork. Don't overdo. Now that's it. That green is sufficient. Now we will intensify the depth towards the left side. For that we will take paint screen. Into that we will add crimson. I will show you what color we will get. I need to add more paint spray to that. It's a pretty color. I hope you can see this. So that is the color. Now placing the color on the so that shade this is like almost dry brushing, you see. There is no much water in my brush. So as you can see, it is very dry. So picking the color again on the brush, placing the color towards the I am creating the texture by stippling method. Now that's it. Now we will add little interest into that by adding orange and a hint of crimson, checking the shade, adding little bit water, and we will add to that no more overdo. That's it. So let it dry, then I will work on the stamen. After working on the stamen, as we discussed this, we will define a little highlight on this bud. With that we can finish the bud and the flower painting. Then we will move on to the leaves and the water. So I hope this session was really interesting. Now we will move on to the next session. By the time my paint will get dry, and see you in the next session. Now we will pre-mix the color, taking orange into that, a little of opera pink, and permanent orange. Perfect. Now let it be there, and we need to make some crimson. Okay, now we have to take a little blue as well. That's it, we are ready to go. Now we are working on the stamen. So first we will lay the first layer. The first layer, as I told you, go ahead with that pink one. So here we will take that opera pink, take a very light shade. I will show you. See, this is what we are going to give the first layer. Add more water, pick some color. That's it. Now we will paint first layer. This is the first layer, okay? Now go ahead with the first layer painting. Okay, the paint is still wet, the paper is still wet, so onto that add blue, wipe off the excess water from a brush, pick the pre-mixed color, check the consistency, add more water if you need it. Now this color you drop it on because here the light is coming from the the right side, so you have to define little shadow on the left side. So the filament left side must be given in dark color. Just place a little of blue into that on the left side. Take the smaller brush, quickly blend it. Now I am working on the shadow on that filament. Now that's it. Now we will add our color. Check the consistency. So we will paint that. Keep one clean brush for blending. Now see, immediately it started to pop out. Always try to give variations. It is quite time consuming, but it is really rewarding. The main thing is you have to enjoy what you're doing. Always look at your reference image and see where the shadows are and the highlights are. Now I have to add a little bit blue onto that shadow part. Always keep an eye on your reference image every now and then. So in this way you can rectify the issues or problems on the go. That's it. We came to the end of our flower painting. Now what is remaining is the leaf, water and a highlight. Now I will see you in the next session. Alright, now we will work on the leaf, taking olive green, making a variation of green by adding little orange, taking a little crimson to the olive green and adding another variation. We will keep it aside. Wash the brush. Now take a little of water and now prepping is done. Now we will place the green. I have switched to my bigger size brush. Now placing it on giving more interest by adding another variation. Take another clean brush and blend it. Lift some color to create that highlight on the leaf. Now what is left is, now we have to add more layer for this water body. With that, we will come to the end of this painting. Now see you in the next session. Okay, now we will take the paint. I have already pre-mixed the paint. I have told you earlier, this is a combination of Payne's grey, olive green, blue and crimson. Tilt the book, sketchbook, so that it won't get into the flower. Taking more Payne's grey. Now that's it. We have finished the painting. Now it's time to add a little bit highlight on wherever we need it. Now let this get dry and we will work on the highlight on the next session. By that, we will come to the end of this class. Hi my class, Now it's time to add a little highlight on the subject. Now it's time to fine tune. I changed my plan. I thought like I can use a white marker instead of a gouache. This is a little bit handy than using a gouache. So we will add a highlight on the bird wherever required. This is a white marker. I'll test it first. Placing the white wherever required. I'm looking at a reference image every now and then. I'm placing the white marker. I'm adding more highlight. Now towards this part, we'll add more highlight. Now on the tip of that, we have to add a little more highlight. Now that's it. With that, we have come to the end. With artistic warmth, Sunitha Nishanth. See you in the next class. Thank you all.